Hello, hello, hello. It's so nice to see you tonight. I have got a special treat. How do I say your surname? Simmons or Simons?
Simmons.
Simmonds. Okay, I've got Natali Simmonds here, and I have to be honest with you. I literally don't know Natali at all, which are the best kind of calls. And I started looking at the writers' posts on Twitter. It's the only thing literally about Twitter that interests me in the least. But I realized the correlation between writers and narrators. And the whole thing about queering agents, queering publishers. Do you publish your own book? Do you not publish your own book? And then I saw your posts, and you had this hard hitting, right? This is what you do. Step A through 1, 2, 3, this. Don't broach any silliness, just get it done. And I love that because I said this to you before the call, I find it rare. We all have a little bit of the left brain, right brain. We all do. But I find it rare that somebody that's created what you've created, I mean, gorgeous work. And I want to get into further in the call, where this all came from. But to also have such like a fierce business acumen and to marry the two seemingly effortlessly. And I'd love to unpack that and maybe make it a little bit easier for other writers because I see them getting into the business and being overwhelmed. I see the inner self-belief, the voice going, but I just want to write. They've got a feeling that they can do this, but the rest of it intimidates, scares, and overwhelms them. 10-year-old Natali, can you please tell me about her?
That's a really good question, actually. I'll try not to get emotional. I was a bit of an outlier because I was 7 when I moved from Spain to the UK. So when I arrived in England, I could hardly speak English, and I was bullied. I was picked on for being the foreign kid. And back then, there were literally no foreigners in my class. I was it. So I didn't even learn to read, let alone write in English until I was 8 or 9. But I've always written stories. So my father, it comes from a long line of artists, and he would draw me pictures, and I would write the stories underneath. I joined up in Spanish when I was 5, 6 years old. So I've always told stories. I always got told off for talking too much. So as soon as my English was good enough, and actually one of my first memories of primary school when I was 7 was being given a jumble of words and being asked to form sentences, I guess to see how good my knowledge was, and it was pretty zero. So even then, my first memory was trying to communicate. So by 10 years old, I knew I wanted to communicate, and I knew I wanted to write or work in television, which is bizarre. I think at 10 years old, I wanted to be a newsreader. I don't know why, but I just wanted to mix that kind of communication, but something sensible at the same time.
But I'm going to interject here. Sorry, yeah. I do this a lot, but I find there are two kinds of people. There are the 10-year-olds that were just happily living in the moment and playing with their friends outside. And then there were the 10-year-olds that were working on their dreams. And I was a dreamer, like at 10. I had a plan. Wasn't sure what. I love that. I love the psychology of somebody as young as 10 years old, really giving thought to the direction of their life.
Oh no, I've always had a 1 year, 5 year, and 10-year plan my entire life. And I see it in my eldest now, and I always say to her, well, there's no need to live that way. And I thought, well, I did. And I wish I was home right now and I'd show you. I've got a book that I wrote when I was 9 and 10, and I fully illustrated, chapters, index, handwritten, and it's a good book about a little girl that gets shrunken down and gets lost in the forest, and she has to have these animals and frogs and mice help her find her way home. It's a good book in its own right. So I was always writing, always. But then, as you said, I've always had quite a strong business acumen, and I got into university to do English and film. Always wanted to work television or movies or books. But I wanted to make money, and I took a year out, and then I never went. So to this day, I don't have a degree. Not that it's ever made a difference to my life. I actually guest lecture for master's courses. So it's fine. But one day when I'm older, I'll go back to uni. But yeah, and then I got into marketing, which I guess is a form of communication and storytelling, but for brands, because I liked making money.
Well, the money, but it was just recently, I think there's been such a big shift when people realized that getting the degree didn't actually do anything for them except put them into debt, depending on where you lived.
Yeah. Well, I was 21 years old, and I remember I had, this is, going back to the early 2000s, I had £6,000 in my ISA, and I had a pension scheme and 3 years experience behind me, and my friends were coming out of university in debt, and I was way ahead. I had a mortgage by the time I was 23.
Wow.
And none of my friends with degrees were able to do that because they were still climbing the ladder at a really, a later age. So,
but where did it come from? Where did the bent towards making money, and was there, because like your father drawing the pictures, encouraging the creative side, was there someone in your life that was teaching you about the importance of money in business?
No, everybody.
It was just in your soul.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm great with it, but it was. I've always.
No, you're great. I'm sorry, you were great with it. I read one tweet, literally one tweet. It was like, how they do 20 comments underneath, and you literally laid out how to be a writer in a tweet, how to do the business, deal with the business side of writing. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a very strong mother, a real feminist, strong working mum, who was like, well, I can be a mum and I can be a great mum, but I can work because my brain and my time has value, and I'm not going to be held back. She was told her whole life she was stupid and she could get nowhere, so she spent her whole adult life proving them wrong. So I had her as a role model. And my father's incredibly creative, and he's had, he's got a good job, and he did really well considering he didn't speak a word of English, and he went to the UK and continued working there. So I've always had this creativity in my life. My dad would take us away for the day to paint a picture, and we'd sit in the park. Me and my sister would paint. I love
your father.
Yeah, he's here at the moment. He lives in my house in Spain now, so we still do creative things together. I was there collecting stones with my kids and painting them the other day, and that's what we do. But at the same time, my mum always drummed into me, well, if you're going to take a year out of university, go out there and make a career for yourself, because nobody had money. Like, I had to pay for everything myself. If I wanted to learn to drive, I had to pay for it.
Yeah.
If I wanted to go out of home, I never got a penny. So
yeah, we were the same. Like getting like $1 was a really big deal. And I'm glad. I am so proud of that, because we lived in a neighborhood where like the average kids had Jaguars to like drive to school.
Yeah.
And I was like walking to school and really happy if I got like $1.
Yeah, no one's ever given me anything. They still haven't. So I live my life like, I'm a bit of a hustler, I guess. If I need to make money, I'll go out and make the money. And I'm proud of that. And I think one of my biggest struggles was when I found myself living abroad with 2 young children, not able to work because for whatever reason I couldn't continue my career in the Costa del Sol, and hated it. I felt so worthless, which is a horrible thing to do, because most people would dream of not having to work and live by the sea and being at home with their babies. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, what a waste. I've got so much to give.
That happens to so many women though, doesn't it? Because you have children at your peak, and I think society's a lot to blame for that. No matter how strong you are, those messages from society, this is your lot in life, you fulfilled it, now shut up and go away and take care of your kids because they are what's important, which they are important.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, that was never going to be me. And then and I've always kind of, when I haven't been able to have something, I've made it myself. I remember there were no thrift stores or charity shops here in the coast. I didn't know what to do with my baby clothes, so I created a Facebook page for swapping and selling and buying secondhand clothes and toys. I ended up with 1,500 people joining within a year, and I'd created the first one on the coast, and it was, how all the immigrants and expats and all of us non-Spaniards got to kind of meet each other and share baby clothes. So like, I'm just good at making things happen. If it doesn't exist, I'll just make it happen.
Which means you'll never be unemployed, because you don't have a boss. You are your boss.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. Yeah, when I need to go and get something, I'm pretty relentless, I guess.
Okay, so writing. So when did the writing part of your life really take over? I mean, did you have other careers before you became a writer? When,
Oh yeah.
because do you notice, it doesn't sound like this was the case for you, probably because of your mother a lot, but I see so many writers, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong just from what I'm reading, that they feel like they don't have permission. Like, who am I to say I'm a writer? At what point do I like, they think that, like, unless I'm taken on by a big publisher, I'm not a real writer. And that seems very counterintuitive.
I think there's a difference between saying I'm a writer because you write, or I'm an
Mhm.
author.
Okay.
And I never told a soul I was writing my first book. Nobody.
How
Well,
old,
I
well,
think
like, where were you in your journey at this point when
I
did
was
you already
living
have your
in
kids?
Spain at the time. Yeah, they were 1 and 3. I was severely sleep deprived to the point where I was literally delirious. I had to go and see a doctor, like I was seeing things. It was a really, really tough part of my life. And I remember just thinking, okay, I'm either going to have a nervous breakdown or I'm going to utilize this moment. So every night that I was up at 3 in the morning, trying to get one of my kids to sleep, or the other one was dragging me up to watch Teletubbies at 5 in the morning, I was just making up my story. And then when I was driving to work, to keep myself awake, I was writing my story. So I got really fixated with this book idea that took me 3 years to write, and most of it was written in my head. And it was my escape because I really didn't want to be in my real life. I hated it. I was so sleep deprived. I remember nearly falling asleep at the wheel. So I was escaping into this story, and that became my first published book, The Pathkeeper, which was the first of a trilogy. And that started me on my course. I was 33, so no, yeah, 10 years ago, I think I started writing. I mean, I was writing as a kid and I had diaries and poems and stuff like that. But I started to take it seriously and think, oh, maybe I'm good enough to get published
But the
when,
story behind the story is a real hero's journey in its own. That's what I love stories like that. I love that. I couldn't sleep. Society was trying to put me into the whole of, stay at home mom. I was like up against a wall, sleep deprived, like literally that is what makes the best stories, because people coming through fire like that and then creating something, that's triumph. That's what we all want to hear. That's amazing. That's a
I mean, a
story.
lot of writers do come from privilege. I've seen people that go like, I went to university and then I moved back home and I said to my mum and dad, I'm going to be a writer. And then they supported me for 5 years until I made it. Mine was more like, I was up at 3 in the morning and I thought, these brats won't sleep anyway. I may as well just write a book. And also because I couldn't do I worked in marketing for 10 years. I was really successful in London. I was, running a team, and I was in Paris and Dubai, and I was earning at that point more money than my husband. I'm a couple of years older than him as well when we met in Australia, weirdly enough. And then I moved, and I was just a mum on the Costa del Sol with no hope of this bloody beach town. Like, I wasn't going to get an agency career out here. So I thought, well, what can I do where I can start a whole new career? And then we've moved around for his job as well. And this way I retained my identity and I got to kind of reinvent myself and express myself. And it has eventually led to being a career, but that does take a while for it to make money.
But and the thing is, when you're going through the fire, right, you obviously don't know, you're not going to know what the outcome is yet. But because even if no writers were to watch this show and just the narrator audience, all of the narrators that are out there right now being scared by the social media posts about AI coming for their job. And there's a shift in, are you going to be the hero, the protagonist, the main character of your own story? So what's the stuff you have inside you to do the whole, I'll write a book at night. Whatever it is, if it's writing a book, if it's starting a dance studio, whatever it is, you have to know that no matter what job is taken away from you, even if it is, you'll find a way, right?
Well, the
Because of
thing
who
is,
you are.
people say, but what if I don't succeed? but then you just keep going until you do. You can stop at the point where you don't succeed. And believe me, there's been so many points where I could have thought, oh, I have not been a success, and I haven't been a success until I have been. And then this might not last, and then I'll not be a success again, but it doesn't matter because I'll keep going until I am again. It's as simple as that for me. But talking of AI, this is why I teach self-branding for creatives. I teach for Rain Dance Film School in London. I've actually got a course, an evening course, and I think it would actually suit the narrators as well, even though they're not screenwriters, because
if there's a link to it, we'll put it in the about section when the video comes up.
I think it really is useful for AI, because I genuinely believe that the way around AI is that those of us creatives who have got a very strong self-branding image will end up, there will be like two tiers. There'll be those that just want cheap AI written books, artwork, narrators, and then there'll be those people that pay more for the name behind it. And I think, and I hope, and I'm trying to be positive, that those of us who have created a brand for ourselves and the worth is in our name and us being the human behind it, will end up actually more successful than we are now, because this AI is going to weed out the middleman, well, that kind of middle tier, and then you're going to have those that are sought after because of who they are, and then the cheap fodder that no one cares about.
Well, that brings two things. I'm afraid not to interrupt you, because then I'll forget the two, because I'm sparking here.
I don't stop talking anyway, so do interrupt me.
That brings two things to mind. First of all, what I think about when you say that is that one author, I don't want to be sued, so I'm not going to say any author's name, but I was shocked when somebody mentioned on a TV show, such and such top thriller writer. Oh, you know, he doesn't write his own books. He has like college students from somewhere else write them. And I was like, wait, what? And I had stopped reading his books because I'd gone off them. But then I went back and looked, and it was like he like mentors them. So it's like all business. So I was really put off by that. But that's like, I guess, the strength. He branded his name. But then I saw recently, and I was horrified by it, writers saying, I've had people use AI to create books and then publish them under my name. And Amazon don't take them off because you can't copyright your own name.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've seen that. And I think what's going to happen eventually is that you're going to have I think AI people that are doing that. Okay, sorry. I think people that utilize AI as a tool at the moment think there's a fast buck to be made. When they realize there isn't, because there's not that much money in books anyway, let alone if your books are crap because they're written by a robot. Yeah. I think eventually they're going to give up and use AI for something else. So I'm not worried about it. Also, I think the reader's going to have to be a bit more savvy, do a quick Google search, look up what books Natali Simmonds has written. Did she read, did she write, I don't know, The Sexy Bear and the Siren? No, she didn't. So I'm not going to buy it. It's not one of her books. And I think readers are going to have to take responsibility to go deeper. And then Amazon will eventually have some kind of tier system, I think, where it's like, you want cheap AI written porn? I think it's basically going to be porn, really. That's what it's going to end up being. AI is going to, I think it'll go into this, smart stuff. And then the people will pay more to read a book written by somebody who they admire.
Yeah, because I stopped reading this guy's books years before I ever even knew. I just didn't like him anymore. I don't want to read him because I thought, why is he not writing the way he used to? And like, I'm not going to I don't want to read a Natali Simmonds book if it's not written by Natali Simmonds. That's the whole point. I search for authors.
And the story behind the story as well. So all my books are written with a bit of me in them. And I'll tell you the story behind why, Good Girls, or why the book I'm writing right now. And one of my books will actually be featuring severe sleep deprivation, deliria, and, murderous ideation and stuff, because it's happened to me, because it's my experience. And I think that's going to make people more likely to buy the book. It's going to be like, wow, it's written by somebody who has been there and done that, not a robot.
Yeah, I think you become adept at. I had a big lesson the other night, kind of maybe in retrospect, regretting all the thrillers I've narrated, because I very rarely, sleep enough to actually have nightmares. But I had just the worst nightmares on earth. Like, you couldn't have written them. I could have sold 1 million and beat The Shining out with these nightmares. And it occurred to me when I woke up, that's what you get. You've honed your bloody, depraved part of your mind. It's,
Yeah,
we
it's what you put
become,
in, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And I love, okay, so what do you say? I know a lot of very, very successful indie writers. And not being a writer, I don't understand the difference, but I see, so I know a lot of very successful indie writers that are just like, they're eating it up. They, they've got their websites, they've got their books, and then I know some writers that have they've become great at maneuvering and working with publishers and narrators. Most of us, we work publishers and we work with indie writers. So we know both sides of it, and it's good to have a foot in both. But then I see writers a lot saying, I've queried 65 people, which, to be honest with you, from a narrator's perspective, we have to send emails to publishers every 8 weeks, like 70, 80, and we just know nobody's getting, they don't get back. You have to do it for years, every 8 weeks. So 65 doesn't sound like a lot, but they're crushed. They're like, I'm going to quit. I have to quit. And in my head, I'm thinking, but then why don't you become an indie writer? And can you explain the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I've had books published, traditionally published, so by one of the top 4 publishers, as self-published indie writer and with a small independent press. So I've actually experienced all 3, and it's a completely different thing. Like it's not the same thing whatsoever. The book, and I teach this as well, by the way. So I co-write with Jacqueline Sylvester as Caedis Knight. That's our indie
Paranormal.
And yeah, paranormal romance.
Yeah.
Those books will not be picked up by traditional publishers anyway. We specifically write to market. We write to an indie market. My thrillers, I know, and I wouldn't have got a TV deal like I have, and I wouldn't have sold as many copies as I had I gone indie with that thriller. I just wouldn't. Yeah. It's different kettle of fish. They're completely different approaches. And so as part of our Caedis Knight romance school, we teach a course called do I want to be an indie writer? Because so many invest time and money, is expensive to do well, and then they realize it's not for them. So for this course, you can find out the real bones of it. How much will it cost you? What do you have to do? What do you have to be good at? I've got a marketing background. Jackie has got screenwriting, marketing background as well. We've both got a lot of skill sets when it comes to this. We're not.
But the cost is what? Editing and marketing. Is that where the cost is?
Yeah, absolutely. And no, you can't write it in 3 days on your phone and put it. Well, you can write it in 3 days on your phone and put it on Amazon, but that's not how you're going to build an audience, because your book's going to be shit. So you have to take it seriously. You have more control. But then you also have to pay. You have to get decent covers. If your cover looks like you did it yourself on Canva, why is anyone going to buy it?
Yeah, I won't. I personally won't. If I see a writer, I make it clear before I even sign on to a project. It has to be a good cover, because it's going on my portfolio.
Yeah, right. You don't want to look like you're working with an amateur. So, and I know a lot of hybrid writers like me that are very, very successful in both sides. Some tell you that they write, others are writing something that's so, like, if they're writing children's books and they're also writing smutty love stories, they probably won't tell you that they're right, because it's conflict of interests and they write under different names. But it's two completely different things. So depending on what I write, that's how I'm going to publish it. And it's hard work writing indie. It really is hard work. You have to give it your all, and you have to understand the algorithms and the advertising, and that's the side of things that we're not that interested in. You also have to have an accountant and your finances and your tax and all that kind of stuff. So
what do you mean algorithms? I never even considered algorithms. Oh my God.
It's because you're dependent on Amazon.
Oh yeah.
Predominantly, you can obviously, you earn less money if you go wider and have Apple and Kobo and stuff. But yeah, you have to understand what category is going to work. You have to research your audience. What is it they're looking for? What keywords do you use? How do you market yourself? What platform should you go on? Who's your target audience? That's a skill set. And that's a skill set that a lot of artists don't have nor want to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, when somebody says, I want an agent, it's because they want someone by their side to do all the contract negotiation. They want to have a foreign rights. They want somebody else to do their audiobooks. We've done our own audiobooks. It's an absolute pain in the neck because you have to listen to your book, because it's really, really hard. You have to listen to your whole book and edit audio. So you're days and days listening to the
so
audio.
you actually narrated it yourselves?
No, we didn't. We had to listen to lots of voices. We had to choose one. We then got the recordings in. We had to sign off each chapter. So for me, it's a lot harder to listen to each chapter and sign it off than it is, because some words weren't pronounced right, or some bits, there was a bit of sound, or, we were very precise with how we did it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I want somebody else to do that for me. So with Good Girls Die Last, because with Headline, they were like, okay, what do you think of these voices? I said, no, they're not right at all. I went on a website of voices and I was like, can you just find a voice that's a bit like these women? They were like, okay. I'm quite autonomous when it comes to decision making. I do take the lead a bit. And then they found this perfect voice. And then I didn't have to do a thing until it was
that's the way
there.
it should be, to be honest. And a lot of, and the hard thing is with a lot of narrators, especially newer narrators, they're less sure. See, that's I think it's, and writers, it's not your job to know it, but what happens is when narrators first start, I mean, they do horrendous, they'll upload like a bit at a time, they're waiting for approval, there'll be mistakes. When they stay in the business long enough, it becomes seamless because you have a team. I have an editor and a proofer that I'd be shocked if something slipped through.
Yeah.
Like
the budget.
But and see, that's the thing. So when you're first starting, you end up with like, sometimes you get what you can afford, and newer narrators might not know how much to charge, or they might. So it's kind of a, they're different. But
22, they're starting out. We're starting out. We're saving money. They know that they can't charge top dollar, and but it's an education, and that's fine. And I tend to always learn the hard way, to be honest. I'm not very good at being told. I find out the hard way. So,
it'll be seamless. And going through a publisher, and you were very smart getting author approval. That's like key. So you and a lot of writers don't realize they can do that now. They can absolutely choose, and give final sign off on their narrators. But the thing is, the publisher takes care of the proofing and the editing. It's all, it's going to be professional.
And they uploaded it, and they announced it, and they promoted it, and then they just tell me whether it's done well or not. And I'm like, all right, I've got all. Here you go, guys. So that's why you want to go trad. And my agent is an absolute angel. I love her to bits. She's like a friend to me. And she'll say this book's not good enough, or change this or that before an editor sees it.
Yeah.
And my editor's wonderful, and he'll say to me, or change this, change that, or what do you think of this? And we work as a team, and it genuinely feels like it's a team effort to get this book out. And when you're an indie, it's not, it's you, and it's all on you. We're not all good at everything. It's not enough to just be a good writer when you want to be self-published. That's why there are some really successful, badly written self-published books, because they're very good at business.
Yeah. And I've seen so many really good writers, and they get so excited, and they'll get the audiobook done. But then that's just the beginning. Then the marketing starts. And the marketing should have started even before that. And then it's sad because you see their heart kind of breaking a little bit, because they thought that writing the book was everything.
It's just the product. And this is what people don't like when I say this. And I've taught this at universities. I've taught this at Raindance Film School. I've taught this on our classes. I've even said this at school visits. It's a business. Authors need to remember that although what they're creating is, the story of their heart, and they've poured their soul into it, and it's wonderful, you are creating a product. And if the people that you are pitching your product for can't sell it and don't know how to place it and how to market it, why the hell are they going to take it on? Why are they going to invest money in selling you? If I was making, I don't know, a chair, and there were already 1 million chairs out there like it, or my chair was a bit wobbly, or I hadn't thought of what shops I was going to pitch it to, or how I was going to get it produced, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go and start making 10,000 chairs before I knew how I was going to get it out into the marketplace.
Yeah.
So I don't know what anybody thinks, if they want to make money doing this and it's not just a vanity project, why they don't have to apply the same logic to the books they're writing. And that doesn't take the romance, well, it does take the romance away from it, but it doesn't take the creativity or the skill or the talent or the experience away from it.
And making money doesn't make it a bad thing. Making money enables you to create more. People have a negative connotation with making money. They think they're suddenly going to be soulless if they think about money.
Well, that's great if you marry a millionaire.
Yeah.
Awesome. Marry a millionaire and then just write books that you don't care about selling. And then you can continue the very dangerous myth that an artist has to be poor to be good.
Starving artist.
My grandfather really was poor. My grandfather was nearly killed during the Spanish Civil War because he was mad enough to be painting in no man's land. That is how much of an obsessive poor artist he was, where his own children had no food. I was homeless for a year when we moved to England. We had nowhere to live. We were living on my grandmother's couch. There's nothing romantic about having no money.
And it's the death of creativity, because I've been in that position too. It's Maslow's hierarchy, isn't it? It's survival first, food, safety, warmth, I can't remember what, but those are first. And if you don't have those, there is no higher creation of beauty going on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Something beautiful. I mean, Van Gogh died penniless and driven crazy. And he only became rich because he owed a lot of money to his brother, and his sister-in-law was like, let's make some money out of this bastard that left us in debt. And her marketing skills made him who he is today. That people forget that bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have got that real part of me is this esoteric, hippie, creative person. The other part of me is like, yes, but I've got a mortgage to pay and children to feed, and I want to do this for the rest of my life. So,
but also, you're feeding power. You're making yourself strong. You're making yourself strong. When you take care of those things, you're creating like a steel backbone. And so you're creating all those things at the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy. You're taking care of the safety, the security. You're making sure those won't ever be an issue, which will only free you up to be a better artist.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had somebody say to me, you're so lucky you've spent the summer in your house in Spain. And I'm like, been lucky. I've had a job since I was 18 years old. I'm 43 now. I work every weekend. I've raised my kids to be really independent so that my life's not, so I can focus on my career. And my husband is also real working class kid, came from nothing, is absolutely works his ass off. So that we can have a summer where it looks really good on Instagram. And
is he from Australia? Did you guys meet in Australia?
No,
was it eyes across a room?
It was a very romantic story, but he was backpacking. He's from Southampton, and I was backpacking, and we met on a bus. He sat behind me, and that was it. Yeah, we had the first day we met. It was like something from a really cheesy YA novel. The first day we met, we both fell asleep on the sun lounger and woke up all curled up and saw the sun rising on a beach. That was like before we even kissed.
So you pretty much had to end up together.
That was pretty. Then our first date was snorkeling the Great Barrier Reef. So we peaked on day one before we were even properly dating. That was 20 years ago. But and then we've traveled and lived all over the place since then. Because we have that fear of never stopping because we know what it's like to have nothing.
Yeah, you know what? Talking to you makes me feel, because I'm very similar that way. And I've been recently, I had a book to do, and I had a life thing happen that threatened to put me off schedule, but I pride myself in never missing my deadlines, ever. So I was going to do what I had to do to not miss this deadline, which meant a weird 2 days of intense, because you can't just work, you have to be good. So after that, I was I thought, this isn't healthy. This isn't good. And I'm a workaholic. But you know what? Is it such a bad thing? I think if I'm going to have a problem, having work ethic.
Yeah, I know. This is a balance, isn't it? There are some weekends where I think, wow, I've got such a luxury that I can just chill with my kids all weekend and and I don't have to kill myself. I don't have a boss on Monday morning if I want to have a lie in. And then there are other times when I'm working till midnight and then I wake up at 4 a.m. and I can't get back to sleep and I start my day at 4 a.m. I don't know if that's normal. I'm not saying I'm normal. I do have more energy than most. I do get by with a lot less sleep. I think it's because my kids, I think I had some kind of like military training with my kids.
Yeah, those
like
years of sleep deprivation.
4 years of sleep deprivation has kind of helped me in long term because I can get by on very little sleep. And I'm very intense and I don't think I'm particularly pleasant to live with. I imagine because I can be like, very obsessive. My kid's been diagnosed ADHD and dyslexic, and now I look back and I think a lot of my members in my family are very neurodiverse. So I think I have that intense hyper focus.
But again, if you look at all the main characters of all the great stories in the world, how many of them do you think were pleasant to live with? I mean, Kathy in Wuthering Heights was hardly pleasant to live with.
No, I don't think very many creative people are very nice or stable. When we're high, we're great to be around. And then when we're at our best, we just leave us alone. Lock us in a room with a laptop, we'll be fine. But I have a lot of drive. I live as if terrified that I will die before I've got everything done that I want to do.
Yeah.
I just have this fear that there's just so much I want to try and so many places I want to go to. And so
there's so much to do and so little time.
Yeah, so I think I push myself more than others because I just think, well, if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. I'm quite fearless in that respect. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so one of my favorite books, and I really need to look it up and try to find the name of it. It's this guy wrote about writers' routines, right? Writers' rituals. And I just love it. It's this delicious book. Each chapter is a different writer and like what they did. There was one writer, like famous writers. One of them was like, she curled up in bed every day at such and such time with like bourbon and some decadent chocolate and like the clove cigarettes. And that was her ritual before she wrote, right? And maybe not everyone's ritual, but I was fascinated by that because I used to have that going into the booth. Like to warm up, I would chant like a Buddhist chant that I found was like 15 minutes long. And I would like search Pinterest while I was chanting because that was good for my soul, looking at beautiful images. And I have a playlist for whatever book I'm going to do. So the music gets me in the mood. What do you do? Do you have are you like a Stephen King? I sit down every day at the same time and write. Do you have something that gets you into the mood, or do you force yourself to do it? Do you have to sit in a certain chair in a certain room? What do you do to inspire yourself and get yourself to do it?
Sounds really decadent.
I love that. I love it.
I've never had the luxury of any of those things. I think because my first ever book was written with like a 1-year-old on my lap and a 3-year-old crying in my ear while sitting on a really disgusting yellow couch in a rented flat, sleep deprived, balancing my laptop on my knee, while feeding a child. I've just learned to write when I need to write. So if I'm on deadline, I'll just write. I'll get up and I'm so obsessive. I can't really sleep or do much else until it's off my plate, then I can relax. So I don't really have a ritual. When I'm working on my mental health and I have days where I'm really feeling down, I will say no phone and no Twitter when I wake up. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have my, I'm going to do my yoga and my proper breathing and have a shower and go down to my office and eat something healthy and then write. And then I have a really good.
How does that work out for you? Do you do that?
No, I tell everybody on Twitter I do that. The reality is I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m, go on Twitter for 2 hours, shout at the kid, clear up cat sick, go downstairs, realize I'm still in my pajamas at 1 o'clock. I haven't eaten anything, indulge in too much chocolate, hate myself, and then stay up till midnight writing. So that's more likely what my days are like. But I think it's important for me to be able to write wherever I am. So if I'm meeting somebody for lunch, I might take my laptop with me and stay there for an extra couple of hours. So I don't go home and get distracted by the washing up or whatever has to be done, right? And right now I'm in Spain and I've got my laptop, and today, because I accidentally thought our podcast was 10 a.m, not this evening, I was already dressed and ready and earrings in and makeup on, and I was like, oh, was like, well, that's good. I'll do some writing. You know,
That's so funny. I in the meantime had stayed up till 4 a.m. last night.
oh,
And when I saw your email, it was way past 9. I was like, oh my God, the
yeah,
picture
exactly.
of this guest made up, sitting there ready to go.
I was really confused. I was like, 2,200. Oh, Jesus. So no, that's good though, because I'm in bed, I'm showered, I'm ready, my brain's switched on. I do a lot more in the morning. So I don't really have a routine, because I think if you then have a routine and then you find yourself on deadline, but you're abroad or your kids are ill or whatever, then you can't get into the writing mood. Whereas I'm just like, oh, I need to write 3 chapters today. Get the hell on
I
with it.
love you.
And then
You're like the guest that has given me permission to not break any of my bad habits. You're
it
like,
doesn't really matter. I mean, some days I'm super healthy and some days I've survived on chocolate and some days I'm a terrible mom and other days I dedicate to wonderful experiences for them. And it's like, well, that's okay. I'm just tired of berating myself, not being perfect in everything I do. So I just squeeze in as much as I can. And I'm time block. I think I time block. That's something that really, really helps me and my family as well. I've
what do
been
you
writing
mean?
about it for my. So I will say to myself, and I will literally put this in my diary, like 6 till 9, write 4 chapters, 9 till 10, do the housework, 10 till 11, go to the supermarket.
Yeah.
Don't forget, and I will put shower, lunch, sit down with the kids and do their homework, watch a movie with the children because you promised them. And I will block out the time and I will stick to it. And I will communicate with the children. I'll say, I promise you've got all my undivided attention between 6 and 9 this evening. But in the meantime, leave me alone, door shut. And they do, because they know it. So when I do that, I get everything done.
That's also you're
And I
teaching
have,
them to be independent and take care of themselves for
yeah, and
those
also to
hours.
respect.
Yeah.
Respect me, because they respect their
Yeah.
dads in the office because he's physically not there, but they don't often respect that I'm working because I'm in the house. So I really and I say it to my mum, I can't call you until 3:30. It's in the
I think that's
diary. I will call
huge.
you.
I think it's huge. I think it's really
Yeah,
important for kids too, because I think a lot of kids are used to like somebody's at their beck and call at all times, whereas with I know this is such a cliche, but all those, if you were Generation X, well, I'm so Generation X, and it was, we were kicked out of the
I
house
really
and fend for yourself, like, and but some of your greatest adventures took place when you had to like kill time
yeah.
because like you were bored.
And
You know,
also
there.
your self-esteem, worth, and confidence is so much better. My 14-year-old, so on a Wednesday, my children cook dinner. It's on the road. We have a rota.
Oh.
And every day they know what they have to do. No arguments, because their names are there and they know what they have to do, and they don't get an allowance if they don't do it. They've never not done it. On a Wednesday, they cook dinner. They live in the Netherlands, so they cycle to school on their own. They come home on their own. They have a key, a bank card, mobile phone, and a bicycle. What can't they do? They live in a very safe country. They communicate with me and they feel great about it. They feel so grown up and independent. They're not neglected.
Yeah.
I give them all the time and attention they need, but likewise, they're very good at saying no. If I
And
say
you're
to them, "Oh, kids,
raising
what are we doing this week?"
adults. You're raising adults, not perpetual children. And that's
They don't need me, but they do
yeah,
need me. They're still children, and I talk to them every single day, and we talk about our emotions and our lives and everything. I'm always there for them, but that doesn't mean to the detriment of my career, my life, my mental health.
exactly. And it's not good for children. I don't think it's good for children to be,
Well, they're a witch.
yeah,
Who wants a hot mum?
yeah.
So
Okay,
no, I
so
think
but
that's what I don't have a routine, but that's what I do.
so you've got a routine. So what about in between books? Like how long does it take you when you've wrapped up one book? It sounds like you put a lot of work on the back end of each book. How long does it take you before the next book starts percolating, or before you feel like antsy that you've got to get to work or you've got to do something else? Or
There's an overlap. I'm never not work. So I'm currently at different stages of 3 books, as well as teaching and traveling and working on lots of like on PR, promo stuff, like things like this, where I'm talking about myself and my work. There's never a stopgap. And it's hard. I actually get a bit fidgety when I force myself, like this week I'm doing nothing. And then I'm like, oh, I'm doing nothing. There's no momentum. I have to kind of force myself. So I'm not very good at stopping for more than 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I'm not either.
My brain doesn't allow it. I go to bed and I'm thinking of the next story. So I already know what my 3rd and my 4th thrillers are about. I'm plotting my 3rd book. So I'm promoting the 1st book. I'm waiting to find out what happens with the 2nd in terms of selling it and if it comes out. I've already plotted the 3rd. I'm working on a fantasy. I've obviously got fantasy novel, not fantasy. And then I co-write with my friends. So we've got more books in the series that we're working on. And then I just feel like there's always hope, because there's no guarantee in this life, this industry. So when I've got a lot of things going on, a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, there's an overlap. And I've been really inspired. I know it sounds bizarre, but I'm really inspired by people like Picasso and Dolly Parton, which you would think are completely different people.
Dolly.
Who doesn't absolutely adore her? She's the epitome of a woman who stands in her own strength, but she diversifies creatively and she's prolific. And Picasso was the same, and Dali was the same, and loads of musicians and artists and actors are the same. They never stop producing, and some of the stuff we're never going to hear about because it never went anywhere, and some of the stuff made them a millionaire overnight. Because they just kept producing. And I think a creative person doesn't know how to not keep producing. It just never stops. And even on the days where I say I'm doing nothing, I sit there and I'm painting pictures with my kids, or I'm helping them write a story for their English homework. Or, we were searching for we search for heart-shaped rocks, and we have a collection every year. We go to the same beach and look for heart-shaped rocks, and we have a whole collection of them, or we're doing Pinterest boards or craft projects. Or my eldest is an amazing painter and does really good embroidery, and my 12-year-old wants to be a screenwriter. She's always writing stories. So even when I'm having my downtime, I'm still creating. And I paint and I draw myself like my father and my grandfather. So
I have a question. So it sounds like the business is you honoring your art. It sounds like the business is you nurturing your creations.
Yes, and I read a book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic, and it was all about that. It was like, if you don't pluck this idea that's come to you and utilize it, somebody else will get it, because ideas are like magic and they're out there.
I started that book and stressed me out because right at that point I stopped. I should listen to it again. I think I'll listen to it again.
I loved it. I mean, I had the highlighter. It's the most highlighted book I have. And this was in 2019, where I made a vow to myself that I wasn't going to chase success. I was going to be prolific. And that's when I wrote manga, and I started teaching, and I wrote fantasy, and I did co-writing, and I started my thriller, and I just had a go at everything. And I allowed myself to sit and paint pictures all day. And I allowed myself to meet amazing artists and not worry about whether they were like, a narrator or a painter or a musician, because I was just feeding this creativity, and good things came from it. Good connections came from it, and good vibes came from it, which attract the right people. So, when you look at somebody like Picasso, he wasn't thinking, oh no, I'll stop painting my blue period now. I'll do some pottery because, that's what's trending at the moment.
Yeah, that's what sells. But I think, because I think that nobody knows themselves, and so I guess that's the work of an artist, is that you're finding yourself through your art. So the closer you get to knowing yourself, people subconsciously see that, and that then sells, because everyone wants a piece of that kind of stardust. Okay, I have 2 questions for you. One that I ask everyone, and then one that I'm for some reason come to my mind. If I could wave a magic wand right now, and you could have what your heart most desires at the moment, what would it be? Situation, circumstance, achievement, current goal?
Yeah, I think I would like to be at a point in my career where I would be financially free to create whatever I want, knowing that people will still want it. And I think that's what most artists would like. I would also like to have a pool here and be sitting by my pool like some kind of Jackie Collins you know, in my bikini, typing away, writing
And
whatever the
a
hell I
drink
want.
with an umbrella in it.
Right? Yeah, with a nice mojito and a hot pool guy. Now I'm joking, but no, it's so cliche, isn't it? No, maybe not. But I would just freedom. I think that's the situation that everybody would like to be in. I don't want things. I would like to be in a position where I say to my husband, you know what, I'm going on a 6-week sculpting course in Tuscany.
Wow.
Because I want to. That's actually a real dream of mine. I do want to do this specific course, but it's a fortune. You know, or say I need to go to Thailand to research my next book, or I don't know, I'm going to spend 3 years on this book because it warrants it, or I'm going to just work with this person on a kids magazine because it looks like fun.
Those all sound like, you know what? They don't sound like dreams. They sound like actual plans that are pretty likely to come true.
It's kind of a plan. I might be 60, 70, or 80 by then, but I don't see why it can't happen. But that's my goal. And it's not because I want a fast car or I want to show up about my new house. I don't want any of that shit. I don't care about designer handbags. I just want the freedom to do what I need to do and not worry about mopping the floor or, you know, having a boss to answer to.
Yeah, get rid of the bottom levels of the Maslow's hierarchy. Well, Timothy Michael Burke said, from a narrator's point of view, thank you for putting a human face on at least one author, and he wishes he had your energy level.
Yeah, I do have a lot of energy. I love that about myself, because I love that it inspires a lot of people and they come away going, yeah, let's do it. But I also exhaust myself and everybody around me. And as I said, it's quite relentless when everybody else wants to relax and I don't know how to. So.
In my opinion, I went back and saw, I've seen it in people, and I went and last time I saw my father, because he always had this amazing life force, this, like, you know, everyone was just like, people flocked to him because he was just, but a few of his friends had died. And you could just see the lack of energy was like, really, it was like a different person. And that was, you know, that, and I think that the biggest challenge is to keep that energy, let people be exhausted, because that is life. You don't want to let go of that energy. That's the life force. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also, like, we've got one life that we know of, that we experience at a time, one life at a time. I don't understand why you're going to spend it doing nothing. Don't you want to be interesting?
Yeah.
Don't you want to just love everyone? I just want to experience everything. And that's what keeps me going, that hope and that excitement. And I do genuinely wake up every morning going, whoa, what have I got on today? And I'm really thankful that I get to, you know, that I get to think that way. And also I'm privileged, like I'm physically healthy, mentally most days. I have wonderful kids and a very supportive family, and I don't take any of those things for granted. And I don't think I could live the life I live. And my husband has a stable job as well. If we were both doing this, it wouldn't be so easy because there's not a lot of certainty in what I do. But I think that's what allows me to have that energy. Not everybody is lucky in that respect. So I am thankful for that.
I have a question that I ask everyone. For the YouTube audience that's going to be watching this in the next 60 years or so, if you could have them walk away with one thing, if they took nothing else away from this phone call, but one thing, piece of advice, words of wisdom, a funny joke, what one thing would you want to leave them with?
I genuinely believe that there's absolutely no reason why anyone can't do what they want to do. Absolutely no reason. I don't want to hear excuses. Like, I genuinely don't believe, if you admire somebody else for having done that, there's no reason why that can't also be you. Whether that's run a marathon, write a book. I mean, it might not, you know, it might take you 10 years. You might have to change your life, you might have to sacrifice something, but you can do it.
But I think desire is whatever you believe, the universe, whatever, telling you, you know, so you pursue things. It's telling you what you need to do. People ignore their desire.
Live a life where you're not going to have regrets. Like, I would hate to get to my last year of my life and think, wish I'd done that.
Yeah. And you know those memes, they say that, like, oh, the nurse that talked to all the dead people, and she says that all their regret, and it was always about what they haven't done. You know?
Yeah, and it's never about, you know, staying back late at work to please your boss. It's always about people you love, and following your dreams, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we're all born with some skills, but I also think that we can also learn skills. And a lot of people, someone once said to me, you're either born a writer or you're not. And that's because they didn't want to help me become a writer. And I just thought, bullshit. You're not born, like, no. If I want to be a writer, I'll become a writer. And I did.
I had a guy
So
tell me on a plane, if you really wanted to be an actress, you'd be acting full time right now. You wouldn't have a survival job. I was like, way to crush a dream, you jerk. You know, I mean,
sometimes you have to do other things while you're doing it. And, you know, don't give up the day job. Please don't give up the day job. There's a lot of stuff I do for money that's not even that creative, but because I still have a mortgage to pay. But there's no reason why you can't do it on the side. Just don't go out as much.
And that's what I was doing. I acted on the side for years, but I guess like the writers, I didn't consider myself, you know, unless you're there are not that many full-time actors out there. I didn't know that. I thought, but what do you have to say before we go to that writer that is losing hope, is on Twitter, seems very depressed, and has sent 65 queries to agents? What advice would you give them?
Well, if you can't flog a dead horse. If you're trying to sell the same book and the first 20, 30 people don't want it, then it's the book. So write another book, or change your book, or change something else, or write a different genre, or write a screenplay, or go back and learn something new, read a book on writing, speak to other authors. You can't, if you've always done what you've, you know, what's that expression? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear someone saying, I spent 5 years querying the same book. That book's not good enough. I had 2 books that weren't good enough. That's fine. I know they weren't good enough because lots of people didn't want it. So what did I do? I worked out what I thought they'd want, and I wrote something else. And each time I write a book, I get better, because
that's what Dan Padavona said. He said, I changed genre and then it all started hitting for me. You know?
Yeah, I didn't get anywhere with my fantasy books because lots of reasons. I know now why. But I really studied the market and I came up with an idea for my thriller, and I thought, no, this is the one. It got me an agent in 3 days, a publisher in 3 weeks, and a TV deal 6 months before the book came out.
I cannot wait to see it on TV, by the way.
But I hope it happens. You know, it's good. It's good that I've got the option, and the team's amazing and I love them, and they came to my launch and it's a great team, but anything can happen. So I'm not going to pin my hopes and dreams on it. Like, I have to stay open-minded, because that's, you know, there's a lot of dreams that get crushed. So
but not only that, but I've learned in this job that people look at the end goal, waiting to see it on TV, whereas you getting the possibility of the TV deal is a goal for a lot of people. That's like a win. So reveling in that, wow, it happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can celebrate that while at the same time thinking, if this book got a deal, all my other book ideas might get a deal. What do I have to do then to do that? You know, so I can do both. I can be like, I'm so thankful, so grateful, and so appreciative of this, and I'm really going to relish this moment and be proud of myself. But also, here we go.
Yeah,
there's more. There's always more I can do. I want to get, you know, a good American deal. There's always more that you can get. And I told myself years ago, one day I'll be what did I say? An award-winning international bestseller. I'm not any of those things at the moment, but I will be one day. So I'll just keep working.
You are all of those things, just waiting for the award and the best-selling. And I feel like on this call, like we should have had Prosecco. Like, this is a Prosecco call. This was everything we need.
I am really, like, you know, if I wasn't an author, I'd be a motivational speaker at the O2, you know, like trying to drum up.
But it was, you should do a TED Talk or something. This call was, if this call doesn't light a fire under people, nothing will. And I'm so grateful for your time. This was just, your energy shines through.
Thank you for finding.
Oh, and
I love it. And I like getting excited about things.
Yeah, but the thing is, it shines through. Even on Twitter, your energy is like huge. And we need more people like you in this world. So
I just think there's just so much exciting stuff out there for us that we could all do. It makes me sad that people are too scared or too, I don't know, insecure or worried to have a go. What's the worst that can happen? You mess up, we'll do something else then.
I love this. Now, if you ever write a thriller with a complex female American protagonist, I'm chasing you.
Oh God, I don't think I could do you justice. I don't know enough about being American. I'll talk to you first if I do.
Thank you so much,
I'm no good at
Natali.
accents.
I'm
Thank you,
so
Daniela. It's been
grateful.
wonderful. So much for your time.
Let me know. Send me any
I'll
links.
see you on Twitter.
Yes, and send me
I
any
will.
links if you'd like me to add them to the about section. So for your
I will
courses
send
and
you
stuff.
an email. Well, thank you so much. This has been really good fun now.
Bye.
Thank you for watching.
Bye. Bye.
Take care then. Bye.